And
welcome to First United's Adult Education Program.
yes, it is.
You gotta hold it close.
Welcome to First United's Adult Education Program. Today, we're hosting Professor Phil Bohlman, who's also a member here at First United, and a professor at the University of Chicago in the fields of music and the humanities. He's going to speak today about the music played by people who made pilgrimages to Jerusalem, which he's done recent research upon. The title of his talk is The Sonic Architecture of the Journey to Jerusalem. Thank you.
Thank you, John. What a treat it is to be here. And
Closer to your mouth. Put the mic closer to your mouth.
What a treat it is for me to be here with you this morning and share with you work that and thinking that I've been doing for many years. What I want to do is talk about something I'm going to call the sonic architecture of Jerusalem pilgrimage. For the past 3 millennia, Jerusalem has played a remarkable role in orienting.
Phil, put the mic right
Yeah,
at your mouth.
Phil, the problem is,
Keep the
you're
mic.
moving your head like this, and every time you move away from the mic.
Does it go over his head?
Yes, it does.
Yeah, put it over your
I'm going to
head.
try to speak really loudly.
No.
Put it over your head.
Put it over your head, and it'll go right to your mouth.
Okay, how is this?
Bring it around front to your mouth.
No.
It doesn't, it's not shaped, my head is not shaped.
That?
How was that?
Perfect.
Yeah, okay, great.
Christina,
Good job.
So our focus today is going to be Jerusalem. And I wanted to say a few words by introduction first, that for the past 3 millennia, Jerusalem has played a remarkable role in orienting and mapping the world. More than any other place, Jerusalem is regarded as the center of the world. As the center, Jerusalem provides a point of orientation for worship as daily ritual for the Abrahamic faiths, that's Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. I'm quite deliberately using the word orient in its more etymological sense as something that looks toward the east, because in fact that's precisely what the role that Jerusalem plays. Synagogues and at least Catholic churches in many places have an east-west orientation. You'll notice that, for example, if you came up Oak Park Avenue here past St. Edmunds, it has an east-west orientation, as opposed to First United, which has a north-south orientation, or one has to call it a borealization, I guess. The travel from points afar to Jerusalem is both a metaphor and provides materiality for the journeys of the faithful through life. In my reflections this morning, I take journey as my point of departure. I invite you to join me in traveling to Jerusalem. And within Jerusalem, we are able to travel together along many different routes because our primary means of encountering Jerusalem today will be through sound, which enables us to move through space and time to witness what I call sonic architecture. Sound both creates space, fills space, and moves through it, thereby multiplying it. I want you to hear many different Jerusalems today, and we'll do that by following the most widespread practice of sacred journey pilgrimage. Even my reflections today will unfold as pilgrimage, passing through the metaphorical stations of the cross, which have provided sonic architecture to Jerusalem for thousands of years. So I've chosen my examples to follow different stations of the cross, which one would follow, for example, the Via Dolorosa, in fact, on all pilgrimages, that one that we might take. A few words about my own relation with Jerusalem. I've studied there. I studied there for 2 years in the 1980s at the Hebrew University. I've taught there as guest professor at the Hebrew University. Until this year, I served as a member of the board of the Martin Buber Society, which is the Institute of Advanced Study at the Hebrew University. In the winter term at the University of Chicago, I'll be teaching a course called Sounding Israel Palestine. And I also go on pilgrimages in various religions. Let me start then with bringing us to the first of the stages in which we want to move. This is be the station one, it's a moment of gathering, a moment of beginning. Jerusalem, and I turn to the act of separation, departing the profane, the earthly, and the everyday. This is the first thing pilgrims do, is they leave their earthly life to go through the ritual experience of pilgrimage. And I want to, after we've departed, I want to take us now to station 2, which I'll call Pilgrim's Progress, the journey from Jerusalem. And I'll begin with a sound example. I'm going to play lots of sound for you today so you get a sense of what I'm talking about. This is an annual ritual in which a song called Jerusalem is performed as the final musical performance at the proms, the series of summer concerts in London and broadcast throughout the United Kingdom and the Empire. And it's done so every year. And I want to just play this as a sort of this moment in which Jerusalem is brought to be part of the British Empire. I chose this example because it's conducted by Andrew Davis, who was the music director of the Lyric Opera until recently. This is a remarkable moment of unity when the BBC broadcasts this to the world. And suddenly, for a moment, all of the Commonwealth countries sing Jerusalem. It's now in England. Now, I'll say just a word about this particularly famous song called Jerusalem. It's it's a poem by William Blake, the great poet William Blake, and it's not really, or it is really, one doesn't really know about Jerusalem. What it is really a response at the end of the 18th century, at the end of the beginning of the 19th century, to industrialization. The idea that the United Kingdom, Great Britain, could create this new world in a sense, a new Jerusalem, and did those feet in ancient time walk upon England's mountain green, and was the Holy Lamb of God on England's pleasant pastures seen. It's a sort of remarkable juxtaposition of time and place, and that's precisely what's at work here in this poem. The poem that and the song itself has incredible meanings throughout in its various uses. If you look at verse 3, those of you who remember a movie from about 40 years ago now called Chariots of Fire, that's where that movie and that idea of Chariots of Fire comes from this song, which then you hear throughout the movie itself. Let's go close to home, and moving to a second station. This is to the New Jerusalem. And what I want to do is use here an example from the great tradition of hymnody that developed in the United States called shaped note hymnody. Some of you may know about this. It developed in the 18th century, then established itself as still a part of hymn singing traditions throughout the United States. It cuts across religions. And is used Chicago as a center of shape note singing. Different notes have different shapes, you see. And this is a song called New Jerusalem from that tradition, from the main hymnal of that tradition, called the Sacred Harp, composed by one of the great hymn writers of the 18th century, Isaac Watts. This is from 1701. And again, we have the sense in this song of drawing people together. And I choose it not only because it has this incredible resonance within this highly American canon, of hymnody, but also because it shows the way in which Jerusalem gathers people, and it does so in the music itself. Now, I don't want to spend much time analyzing the music here. If you want to have a really close analysis, talk to Christine, who is much better at music analysis than I. But what we see in the first line here is voices entering at different points. They create what's called a fuguing tune. In other words, the song New Jerusalem gathers voices as it gathers different voices through this contrapuntal movement. And so in the music itself, as in the performance of Jerusalem at the BBC Proms, we see Jerusalem gathering people. People arrive and are gathered there. I want now to just be briefly theoretical, and just bear with me, I'll move quickly through this. We arrive at station 4, the pilgrimage to Jerusalem, the theory of contrapuntal chronotope. What I want to do here is show the way this principle of gathering that happens with pilgrimage to Jerusalem. In the center, we have this kind of what I'm calling contrapuntal chronotope. It means that people gather, voices gather, especially in a place, to realize that place through sound and through their diversity. That's the counterpoint, the different voices that come together. And in so doing, they move through time and space. So these are concepts in this little diagram that I put here. The way and the movement of the pilgrim in singing moves in first of all, and I'll talk a little bit about this, the way that at 12 o'clock we have here ascent. Pilgrimage sites are high generally, and one ascends to them. Jerusalem is one of the highest points in all of Israel. It's so high, in fact, that you can see Amman, the capital of Jordan, from Jerusalem. But it also is, from the earthly journey in this process of ascent. At 9 o'clock and 3 o'clock, we see the movement of past to the present. So think again, even a little bit about this Jerusalem of William Blake in the BBC Proms. Were those people, were those feet in ancient times, did they walk on Greenland and on the green fields of England? A movement from Jerusalem at the time of Christ to the end of the Industrial Revolution. And this is a critical, this is a critical sort of move. My next station is Station 5. Pilgrimage songs are located in many different places. I've shown two examples from important British and American traditions, but the idea of pilgrimage is anchored very much and pilgrimage in Jerusalem is anchored in the Bible. And what I want to do here is just show you, they're particularly a group of psalms, and they're called the Shir HaMa'alot, the songs of ascent, or the songs of going up here. Here is one of those songs called Psalm 122. It's a Shir HaMa'alot, the David, a song of ascent to David, a prayer for the peace of Jerusalem. I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord. Our feet shall stand within thy gates, O Jerusalem. Jerusalem is builded as a city that is compact together. Whither the tribes go up, the tribes of the Lord, unto the testimony of Israel, to give thanks unto the name of the Lord. So we have again this idea of movement, moving up, moving within, filling a space, and all of these different people, the different tribes, the 12 tribes, all coming together and realizing Jerusalem in song. This is the word song. Shir in Hebrew means song. Even to the point that this use of, there are other ways in which Jerusalem is rendered in song in biblical sources. And I take one here as another example. This is pilgrimage in the Song of Solomon, or the Shir HaShirim, the Song of Songs, in which we find Jerusalem eroticized. Jerusalem is a woman, is female in this reckoning. Throughout most biblical sources, Jerusalem is a woman. And here in the Song of Songs, we have this eroticization of Jerusalem, but again through song. Here I'll just bid you. I offered myself to my beloved. My lover had escaped, disappeared. I abandoned my very soul that he would speak to me. I searched for him, but found him not. I called for him, but he answered me not. The watchman found me. So even though she's found by those who watch over the gates of Jerusalem. So we see Jerusalem, again, this is a biblical source. This is a translation I did of myself. In this case, perhaps emphasizing a little bit what I wanted to say with it. Let's move to the next station, Station 6. Here we have modifications of Jerusalem through the Abrahamic faiths. So as I said, Jerusalem is a point of pilgrimage for Christianity, Islam, and Judaism for all. And it becomes that way for very different reasons. We've just seen two of these examples. Two Christian examples were followed by two Jewish examples from those biblical examples. And I want to turn now just briefly to the way in which Islam regards Jerusalem as a point of pilgrimage. So important for Islam is the way in which it was the last place in which Muhammad was on this earth, the Prophet was on this earth. The Prophet comes from Mecca, and he arrives in Jerusalem, and he ascends to heaven from the point which is where the Al-Aqsa Mosque is today. Here is one of the depictions from the 16th century source from Persia of this ascent to heaven. It's a bit difficult in recent years to go to the Al-Aqsa Mosque. It's on the Temple Mount, but in past years I've been there. Let's move to Station 7. And here I'm going to take one point of, take one place now within the city. Looking at this idea of the space of gathering different sounds, being made by sound, being constructed, having an architecture of sound. And what I'm going to do is take us, this is the old city of Jerusalem, and I'm going to take us right to this point here. This corner right here, where there's something called, it's little, I can't read it either, so. But this corner is something called the Austrian Hospice, which is a place where pilgrims from the Austro-Hungarian Empire in the 19th century came to stay. I'm just going to visit this place for a moment. It's on the Via Dolorosa, which is roughly this path right here. In fact, it turns a corner at that moment. This is the Via Dolorosa. This is Stephen's Gate, and this is Damascus Gate here, of the gates of the city. So let me go back. And I'm going to take us to the garden, the space of pilgrims in the Austrian Hospice. And I'm with it, you will hear me speaking. And this space is created by signs, the connections of pilgrimage places outside of Jerusalem, and the main pilgrimage places of Austria, because they become the source, the point of origin. So you will hear, and what you'll hear are three, just so you'll hear three calls to prayer at the same time, and from three different mosques. This is a Catholic Christian hospice, and I'm speaking, you'll hear me speaking with some young Israeli girls trying to explain what it is they're experiencing. These are the pilgrimage sites in Austria, many kilometers away.
Du
So it's the bowls of pilgrims here. Margaret Zell and Margaret Plain. Now let's stay in the same building. So here in the space is a lovely garden where you can have Viennese coffee and imagine one's in a wine garden in Vienna. But throughout the building, it rises to the top, and there are these different levels of sound and ritual and worship. Christian and I, in Christmas Eve 2013, we went to Mass there. But now let's go to the top of it, where we look over the whole city of Jerusalem, and we hear sound from all different places at the top of this pilgrimage. So here you see Jerusalem. There's the Al-Aqsa Mosque. There's a minaret. We're looking south. But you can hear all different from around. You hear the many sounds floating over the city, constantly mapping the city sound-wise. That's Christine. I wanted to play it that far so we could see her. So we have in this constant sound is constantly filling spaces and moving through spaces. So we saw minarets for the Adhan, for the call to prayer. We saw at the German church there. We're on an Austrian church where there's ritual. We hear and we also see the Temple Mount where there is prayer. I move now to the next stage of ritual, which is called the liminal stage. And I wanted to sort of think about the ways in which Jerusalem has a way of mapping the diaspora, because it's critical to the idea of diaspora. Diaspora is a concept of being expelled from a place, but wanting to return to that place. It's a critical way of thinking about what diaspora is. And Jerusalem from the diaspora was imagined to have incredibly different types of architecture. And I'll give you some. Here you see a pilgrim's map of Jerusalem from the 13th or 14th century, in which you see that it's looking like a circle, indeed looking like a cross in the middle. Approximately so, but the architecture here is very, very different. And this is a Christian pilgrimages map. Here we see a Jewish pilgrim's map of Jerusalem. And if one reads it like this, one reads it by going, oops, I'm sorry. One goes through these different lines from shrine to shrine to shrine to shrine to shrine. Again, a very different idea of the architecture, the way in which space. Now, these shrines are important because, as they are in the stations of the cross for the Christian pilgrim, because one stops there and one sings. One sings at that point, realizing this very map. These ideas of the journey to Jerusalem have remarkable forms from over the past 3,000 years, but even today. And they mark very important ways in which the world is understood to be oriented to Jerusalem. I'm going to just one ballad. This is a printed folk song from the early 16th century. It's the first. Sorry. It's the first ballad in German to be printed. The printers were north of Venice. They were printers who had been expelled in 1492 from Spain. Now, you don't necessarily see this as German. It actually is. It's German, but it's Middle High German. It's not Yiddish, and it's realizing Hebrew characters in this print. But historically, it's an extremely important one, and its text also is extraordinary in its importance because it's about the origin of sound as one goes to Jerusalem. The origin of sound, again, it's the woman who in these pilgrimages realize sound. So in the story that the Count of Rome, it goes on a pilgrimage to Jerusalem, but he's captured, and then his wife, who remained in Rome, comes dressed as a monk, and she plays for these captors. She plays the harp and sang a new song, and her voice, this idea of music moving along the pilgrimage route, wins his capture. Venice is a very important place, and for pilgrims, in this larger story that I'm telling today, because of the ways in which it was an important station in itself. When do we want to have questions?
At least 5 minutes before the end.
Okay, and that would be at what time?
Quarter of.
Quarter of. Okay, good. So I take you to Venice. I don't know if everyone knows here that the word ghetto comes from the first ghetto, which is the ghetto of the Venetian Jews, formed again after the expulsion of Jews and Muslims from Spain and Portugal. Spain in 1492, Portugal in 1497, and they resettled along the Sephardic Jews. Sepharad means Spain in Hebrew. The Sephardic is largely along the Mediterranean coasts of various places, also in the Caribbean. They were the first Jews to settle in North America. And in Venice, they settled, they were given an island. They were given an island where the iron foundries were located, and they were allowed to occupy that island and work there. And it was cut. The sound was cut off by the wall. But what becomes important about that is that the word for iron foundry in Venetian dialect of Italian is ghetto. And that word is used now, of course, in very different ways when we use the word ghetto, but this is its very first use. The idea of places of diaspora, of utopias and dystopias, places in the diaspora where there was safety, was very important. And in the same year as the ghetto was founded, which was 1516, the Venetian ghetto, a very well-known book was published by Thomas More, Saint Thomas More, called Utopia, in which, within a Christian framework, Thomas More creates the idea of an island of utopia. He coins the word. That's also the word that comes into existence for the first time in 1516. And it's one of these places, again, where the sacred journey then finds solace and is filled with music. I want to keep moving here, so we can hear some more sound. And I want to move now to the third part of this long ritual, sacred journey, which is called communitas, and it's the point of gathering again. So we've talked about the way in which there's separation, then there is movement through spaces, but then there's the gathering of the pilgrims together. We've seen that also. And that, and it's in that sense that we might think about the ways in which pilgrimage is a popular music movement. It's a bottom-up movement. Even within the Catholic Church, there is no ministry, there is no political, at the Vatican, there's no political organization that part of the government of the Vatican that takes care of pilgrims. Because in fact, pilgrims come from beneath rather than from above. But let's turn now to the gathering, to in our station number 11, in which we'll come to the new gathering of the return from the diaspora of Jews in settlement in the beginning and the end of the 19th century, and then the beginning of the 20th century. Settlement was called yishuv. It means to settle, to sit, to rest, a period of resting. It says the same root as the word Shabbat, which is or Sabbath, which is also the seventh day, which is Shiva. So the symbolic importance here is really very important. And we see images again from this time of creation, of trying to gather in song and in music to gather in a new idea of singing together and worshiping together in Jerusalem. I chose to represent these two images from the first decades of the 20th century by the artist, very well-known artist and illustrator named E.M. Lillian. And we see here in this first example, the way in which Moses, in this case, depicted here, is entering has reached the Jordan River, which unfolds below him. He never crosses. It's at this point in Deuteronomy 32 that Moses sings in the text itself. It's at the end of Deuteronomy, at the end of the 5 books of Moses. He sings something called Moses' song, and he literally sings of his death because he never does reach Jerusalem, which we see here. But interesting how it's imagined in this artistic style of the early 20th century. And here we see the same artist creating for a new journal called Alten Neuland, the old new place. Again, juxtaposing the part, and here we have the laborers working the soil. Again, the gathering of immigrants and pilgrims. Station 12, the millennial journeys. And I wanted to play some examples that, again, to give you a bit of sound, the way in which Jerusalem finds its way into popular culture. I'm going to play just the beginning of a song with a great Lebanese singer named Ferouz, who sings a song called Quds al-Atika, Old Jerusalem, in the style of Arabic popular music from Lebanon.
شوارع القدس العتيقة
the streets of Old Jerusalem, Al-Quds al-Atika. In other words, she's passing through the past. Just in Jerusalem at William Blake, it's the feet, did those feet of the ancient times walk on the green lands of England? So this is a very good example, even here, of the way in which it enters popular culture. And certainly this is a song which makes a case also, if we were to hear the whole thing, for Palestinian rights. I'm going to go now quickly to another example of popular culture. This is the German entry to the Eurovision Song Contest. One of the things I do is work on the Eurovision Song Contest. It's the largest, most important song contest in the world, and it takes place every May. And in 1999 took place in Jerusalem, and the German entry was this. So this is Germany singing. This is the national anthem. A song called Journey to Jerusalem. I play this, first of all, because here you have a song realized as German in Israel by Turkish German citizens. They sing in, how many languages do we have here? I think 5 languages. In other words, they embody themselves this idea of filling a space with diverse voices. Oh, I don't want that. I spell better than that, anyway, so. And this sort of way in which it becomes very much part of popular culture. Sometimes we don't even realize it. A few other examples I wanted to have. This is a pilgrimage shrine, a Jewish pilgrimage shrine in Israel. And what it says here is that this pilgrimage shrine has a direct telephone to God, and somewhere you can see the telephone, and you can ring her up anytime you want to. But in the Jubilee year, there was many, again, CDs filled the spaces. Music was created for pilgrims to fill these spaces. Let me come to an end so we can have a few questions. I'll close with the final examples of gathering. The gathering, the end of the journey. I've already mentioned that these songs of ascent, this is another one, Psalm 133, recognize that arrival, and it is again the idea, behold how good and how pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity. The journey comes to a different end for Islam, because, and it's really my final example of sound, because it's in the surah, or the chapter number 17 of the Quran, which is called Al-Isra, that we read of the final journey, the very end of the pilgrimage Glory be to the one who took his servant Muhammad by night from the sacred mosque to the farthest mosque whose surroundings we have blessed, so that we may show him some of our signs. Indeed, he alone is the all-hearing, all-seeing. It is at that moment of the ascent.
سبحان الذي أسرى بعبده ليلا من المسجد الحرام إلى المسجد الأقصى الذي باركنا حوله لنريه من آياتنا إنه هو السميع البصير.
The sonic architecture of Jerusalem and this farthest place of worship does far more than gather symbols and images. The worship to which they give voice, what we hear in this recitation from the Quran, give voice, unfolds along the journey across the space and time of human life and spirit. The ascent through the sonic architecture of worship to which I've tried to draw us closer in the journeys I have followed with you this morning at First United. Thanks.
Any questions, please, speak up.
Please.
That video of the Austrian hospice, the music emanating from it sounded more Middle Eastern than European. What were we
No, it
hearing?
was entirely. It was called a prayer. So it's the call to prayer from three mosques in the
Oh,
area.
they just happened
Yeah.
to be.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And the two girls with me, the two children with me, we were speaking Hebrew.
Okay,
So-
so that
so-
music wasn't coming from
Yeah.
the Austrian.
I can give a stab at Austrian
No, that's okay.
dialect if you
No.
want.
I misunderstood what I was
No,
saying.
so that was the point, that all of these things converge in the space. So the
Christmas,
space
Jewish,
contains
yeah.
all these different sounds, three different
I
mosques.
get it.
Has anyone here gone to John?
I have, it's less of a question than a statement. You use the word space in several different ways, different meanings. Of course, there's the pedestrian space that we're all in, and yet the music itself creates a space. And that's where I trip. I mean, I have trouble with that and trying to understand.
How music creates a space?
Yeah, and does it only exist, does the space, it sounds like a kind of holy space of sorts. Or at least it's not the everyday space that we all know. And it's like, is that what happens in worship, or is that?
It's one of the things that happens with the worship. I think the important thing to think about is the way in which music is not just the sounding of music, the production of sound,
Right.
but it's the reception of sound. In other words, when we talk about music, we're not just talking about some sound being produced, we're talking about the way we respond to it, that it enters our way. In Arabic and Hebrew, this idea that listening and hearing are two different processes. And so the space is created, has to be created in the space where one hears it. And that's why, in Hebrew, some of you will know this, the opening prayer on Friday evening, the Shema. Shema means both hearing and listening. Hear, O Israel, or listen to me. And these are very different ways. So the space then of music is the space in which which the listener also becomes involved in the act of responding to sound, or hearing the voice of God, for example. Each of these examples I showed are about how they're asking people to listen, to experience Jerusalem, to enter its spaces by singing. And that's what I find remarkable about them.
So both the singers and the listeners are together in a new space.
Yes. I think, let's go back to this wonderful example from the beginning. And you'll see, and let's just pause on it, but watch the way in which the orchestra and the chorus produces, but then everyone joins in singing and moving. And it's broadcast throughout the BBC. So you'll see scenes of people in Belfast joining in and singing the song. So the listeners become then, they create the space of this old Jerusalem of William Blake in every time this is sung. So again, I'll just watch what happens to the listeners. Here's the orchestra. He turns. This is a massive hall, Royal Albert Hall. So again, we see that this song doesn't exist only in its text and its notes, but indeed in the performance, in the way in which it gathers all of these people. Here it unifies a nation. It unifies an empire, actually. I hope that helps. It's why we sing in worship. We create the space, we create and recreate the space of the sanctuary. Every time we sing, when we listen, all of that is something which is we're thinking and re-experiencing the space as a space of communion, of space. Today's quite literally a day of communion, in which sound opens that space so that we can enter into that space as listeners and as worshipers. Yes, please.
Maybe it's more of another comment, but I'd like your thoughts. It seems to me sometimes that in the modern American society we become, music is maybe no longer as central to our lives and thinking as it might have been in other places at other times. We love music, but it's sort of over here somewhere, and we go in and out of it when we want to hear music. But whether it's religion or the German idea of Bildung, where it's like almost your whole intellectual education should be built around music, we don't seem to think that way about music anymore in our. But I don't know if you agree or disagree. I mean, I'm just thinking out loud.
Yeah, I mean, as somebody who teaches music,
It's your world.
but I also teach, but I also realize that people find their way to music in very different ways. You have these moments when when the Eurovision Song Contest, to take this as it has the live, it's more and more known in this country, in the United States, but it has 600 million listeners to the live performance, more than the Super Bowl. So that's the question, what do we understand as listening? And I think knowing music, it's understood to have this present in the Middle Ages. It was one of the sciences of the quadrivium. I mean, it was central to what knowledge was, and it certainly was in Greek philosophy. So I would say. So I don't know whether this is a question of filling symphony center seats or what, but I do think perhaps one of the I sit on the board of directors of the Yale Institute of Sacred Music, and one of the debates we have, or discussions, it's not a debate, is the waning of congregational singing. This is sort of not in any specific place, but in many different churches, that congregational singing is diminishing, and people there's less singing together in churches that is turned over to either no relatively little music or not. And then that's an interesting. I think we can think about things like this and use some of these ideas about what music does for worship and for belief, and perhaps and think about its importance for us. Thank you again, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you. Let me borrow your microphone. One more final word here. Be sure to come next week when we're having Chuck Stone, who's a lawyer and organizer for Bridging. His group is, I forgot the name. He works for a group that Braver Angels, excuse me. He works for a group called Braver Angels, which tries to bridge the divide in American politics at the moment, and works on various methods for doing that. And I hope you can come next week and hear him. Thanks for coming.